Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome once again to Syracuse Basketball Postgame presented by Krause Health. My name is Brent Axe. We are live here on the Syracuse Orange Basketball Facebook page, live on Syracuse Orange Sports, on YouTube as well. And we're coming off the heels of a pretty embarrassing loss. I mean, no other way to put it. Syracuse just absolutely hammered by Duke. The final score, 79-59 at Cameron Indoor Stadium. And even that score does not represent just how thoroughly Syracuse was dominated in this game by the number 6 Duke Blue Devils. So Syracuse falls to 9-10 on the season. Your comments will be highlighted and welcomed throughout the conversation here. I'm sure you guys have a lot to say about this game, but really the only thing you can say is Syracuse is just not on the level of the team they played today. There is a Grand Cameron-like gap, if you will, between Syracuse and Duke at this point, and the numbers are pretty darn ugly. But the only number you got to look at here, the only way Syracuse had a shot coming into this game, frankly, was if they just had a superior offensive game and hit a bunch of threes, right? The only way they were going to keep pace with this Duke team, given its inefficiencies, Syracuse's inefficiencies on defense, and just generally how they've played this year, was to shoot the lights out. And when you go 5 of 21 from three-point range, when Buddy Boeheim doesn't even hit a shot until midway through the second half, and you're not hitting from the outside, you're just not going to have a chance against a team like this. So that's the story of today. And I think the story of this season for Syracuse at this point reminds me of a boat taking on water, because there are times when Syracuse can kind of furiously grab the bucket, get the water out of the boat, and kind of level things out, right? They're at 500. They're below 500. They get the bucket and they get the water out of the boat. They bob above 500. But bottom line is this boat's taking on water and it's going to sink. This is not a team that is capable of playing in the NCAA tournament short of winning the ACC tournament. And in order to do that, you got to win 4 or 5 games in a row. And this is just not a team that has shown it can do that. And really a humbling experience at Duke. Now, they play Duke again next month at the Dome. There'll be 30,000 people there, and that'll be an event. And who knows where both teams will be at there. There's still a lot of action to go for this team. But look, Syracuse has flashes of brilliance. They show they can score. And, the Clemson game on Tuesday was certainly that. But, I was kind of wondering what would happen when you finally played the class of the ACC. And look, you played Miami. That's a team that's at the top of the ACC. You blew an 18-point lead in that game if you're Syracuse, but still lost the game. Wake Forest found a way to hold off a furious Orange effort there. It's not an effort thing from this team. They just don't have the talent. And today was as humbling as it gets with all the NBA talent on the other side of the floor. And from the get-go, Duke's up 11-2. Now, there was a run there where Syracuse kind of closed down the score and made it within 3, and Duke wasn't shooting well, but you could just tell from the minute these two got on the same floor today that it was just not going to be a game, and it did not end up being a game at all. So we told you about the big stat here where Syracuse shoots 5 of 29 from three-point range. Duke, 14 of 37. Quite the opposite for them. That's 37%. Overall, Syracuse shot 35%. Duke shot 47% from the field. The Orange, 24 of 68. And an incredible stat here, Duke had 30 field goals, and 25 of those were assisted. They moved the ball extremely well, whereas Syracuse only had 13 assists on the day. Duke actually had more turnovers in this one, 15 turnovers, but Syracuse only able to gain 13 points off those turnovers, where Syracuse turned the ball over 10 times, and Duke got, 20 points off those turnovers. Points in the paint were even. Syracuse picked up a lot of garbage points there, but Duke just bigger, stronger, and faster in so many different ways. And this is, pretty incredible even for Duke. They had 4 players score 15 points. Wendell Moore, 15 points. Williams inside, 15 points. A.J. Griffin, the younger brother of former Syracuse player Alan Griffin, 5 of 9 from three-point range. He ends up with 15 points on the day. And Paolo Banchero, who is going to be a top 2 pick in the upcoming NBA draft, he ends up with 15 points on the day. Syracuse did not have a player get into double figures until Jimmy Boeheim hit a free throw midway through the second half. He ends up leading the team with 12 points. Jesse Edwards with 12 points on the day, 9 rebounds. He turned the ball over 4 times, had 4 steals. He's really the only bright spot for Syracuse in this game. Cole Swider had 11 points, but, just an awful effort. When you look at the shooting numbers here, Buddy Boeheim goes 1 of 10 from 3-point range. He shoots 2 of 15 overall. Joe Girard, 3 of 13 from the field, 1 of 9 from 3-point range. What more do you need to know? If those two are not shooting the ball, you're not going to compete with a team like Duke. You're not going to compete with a lot of teams, let alone Duke. So that's the story of this one. Syracuse outclassed in every way, shape, and form against one of the better teams in the country. And by the way, Duke didn't even have Trevor Keels out there today, who's one of their better players. So it just goes to show you, as we mentioned, kind of the gap that's between Syracuse and Duke right now. So your comments, hot and heavy and flowing. Let's jump into it. We'll start with a positive one. Catherine says, can't always be the best. Next time for the Orange, right? Brian liked the Grant Cameron quote there that we had. Mark thinks it's a disgrace. 12 wins at most for this team. Yeah, and once again, they set a mark that no one wants to see. They have never been below 500 this deep into a season. They just kind of keep going up that ladder. 9-10, 19 games into a season. They've never been below 500 this deep into a Jim Boeheim coached season. Mark says 17% from 3-point land. It is sad but true, my friend. 5 of 29. That's 17% from the 3-point line. David says need to get better athletes and scorers into the program. Lots of stuff from you guys today. Doug says, Buddy played well, didn't score for like the first 30 minutes. I thought he was heading to the NBA, question mark. Wow, you guys are going at it today. I'm having a hard time picking which ones to highlight here. John says could be the first 20-game loss season for Syracuse at this point. Matt with an interesting point. Symir's got to play more, handle the pressure better, and doesn't need a high ball screen to muck it up. Listen, I think that's a great point that you make, Matt. I think it's pretty clear. You know, look at the pattern here in recent games. Florida State plays a pressure defense, not quite in your face and as intense as Duke, but it's a pressure defense, and Joe wilted. Clemson game. They put the 3-guard lineup in, not because Joe wasn't playing well. Clemson didn't play as much pressure defense, but just because it worked. It takes pressure off Joe. Symir's clearly the better ball handler. And you know what? His scoring is improving. You know, I want to say he's not a great scorer, but he's been getting to the rack. Teams are giving him that shot. He's been taking what the defense gives him there, but he's primarily in there as a ball handler and to facilitate the offense. Obviously, when Joe struggles, and there's a lot on his shoulders, right, to run the offense and sometimes be the offense. You need someone to facilitate and run the offense. I think we're going to see that as we go here. That's been a positive for Syracuse as of late, with not a lot coming out of this game. And I think we'll continue to see that. I think Jim Boeheim realizes that. You know, Joe can't do everything. There's some pretty impressive stats for Girard, but I think his limitations stick out in a lot of ways too. And Symir Torrance, I think, is going to get that call a little bit more as we go here. Brian says a bricklayers convention for the Orange out there. Dave says 8 seasons in a row, 10+ losses for the Orange. I think it's, didn't mean to click that off. I think it's a sign something has to change. Look, I think a lot of Syracuse fans are starting to get frustrated. They see the pattern here, and what has saved Syracuse's skin in recent years is they go on a tournament run. Like 2016, they barely get in the tournament. They go to the Final Four. The next year, they should have been in the tournament and got left out. 2018, same thing. They're kind of scratching, fighting, and clawing for a spot, make a Sweet 16 run. 2019, they lost in the first round to Baylor, so they made the tournament. They actually made the tournament pretty comfortably that year, but not up to what the standards of what Syracuse fans expect. There was no tournament in 2020, and then last year they barely get in and make a Sweet 16 run. So 3 Sweet 16s and a Final Four since 2016, that's what most will hang their hat on, but others will say, how much can you hang your hat on that? Is that what it is, or should Syracuse be a better team, from November to March, as opposed to just all in, put your chips in the middle of the table and hope that the tournament carries you? What you do in the tournament is important. I think we all agree on that. That's ultimately what you're judged on. But the gap keeps getting wider for Syracuse here. Like that Duke team, and this is a Duke team, they went to Cameron 3 years ago and beat 95-91 with a Tyus battle, putting up 32 points. Zion Williamson's on the floor that day. And that's a Syracuse team that had, Tyus, Elijah Hughes, a young Buddy Boeheim, Marek Dolzaj, Pascal Chukwu, right? That team kept pace with Duke. And I believe the game before that, if I'm not mistaken, Syracuse did not play very well at all. So, they've kind of shown those flashes through the years, but slowly but surely things have been kind of fading out. You got a 5-star player in Benny Williams. I'm sure some of you are noting that here. I don't know why he didn't get any playing time down the stretch I'm not always one that agrees with the criticism of Benny not playing in this game. Why not? You're down by 30 points. It's Cameron Indoor. Let him play at one of the most hallowed places in college basketball. Get him some minutes. Get him some run. It's against Duke's, second string. And their walk-ons were getting in. Coach K's grandson was getting in. That kid barely plays. And he got some run against Syracuse. So I get some of the frustrations there, and that's kind of weird to see that. Next year, I'm already talking about next year, right? They've got a recruiting class that's top 15 in the country. Now, I think that's partially because they have a lot of players in that class, but, Justin Taylor is a noted talent that's coming in. There's some good players that Syracuse has managed to recruit, by the measures you want to see. But how long does Jim Boeheim get to coach that? How long does Jim Boeheim get to use that excuse and say, all right, well, I got this recruiting class coming in? I think a lot of fans there's some bubbling frustration here. And, you could say, well, they've never had a losing season under Boeheim and a lot of things that would make you say, hey, wait a minute, what are you talking about here? But it's an interesting line you got to cross here, especially, look at Mike Krzyzewski walking away from the game, Roy Williams walking away from the game. I get why people feel that way. It's a big loaded question that Syracuse will have to answer at some point, but maybe you get your answer if they finish with a losing season, right? You got to really re-examine some things here and see where it goes. Now, that being said, Syracuse will probably make a hell of a run and get to the tournament somehow and go to the Sweet 16 because that's what they do. But look, this team just doesn't have it. The defense was abysmal today. Not that I didn't expect that. I said before the game on my radio show during the week, I'm like, forget defense. You're not going to defend this team. You can't defend this team. This was all on the offense, and they had one of their worst games of the year. And just in case you're wondering, certainly this is the case. It's the worst loss to Duke in the series. 20-point loss. It was a 31-point advantage for Duke. At one point, it was just a matter of where the score was going to end up, and where it ended up was being the worst loss in the series. John says, not even competitive, just chucking up threes. Big difference replacing Braswell and Kadari for JR and Torrance. No defense at all. Imagine what this team would be if Jesse left. He's their best player. Jesse has really been, how can I put this? The shining star, the shining story. He's one of the most improved players, if not the most improved player in the ACC, and will be all ACC if he sticks this out for Syracuse. This is a kid, you got to remember, he barely played high school basketball. He was the definition of a project. Brought him in from the Netherlands. Jim Boeheim loves those long players, see if he can kind of develop them into defensive players in the zone. He held his own out there against Duke today. Now, he got in a little bit of foul trouble again. Where did he end up? Let me look at the stats here just to make sure. But so let's see. He ended up with 3 fouls on the day, picked up his 3rd foul with about 10 minutes to go and didn't pick up any after that. Syracuse only committed, 6 fouls on the day. And Teddy TV was in the building, which tells you they just let him play once Duke got that huge lead. But he's the one kind of bright, shining star on this team right now, right? And the thing that you have to be encouraged by for the future, and he was the player last year. He was the Benny Williams of last year, right? Free Jesse was the expression last year, and he started to come on at the end of the year, and he's been great. So, that's a great point that you make there. And other than that, you're just kind of filling in here and there. We're wondering about the younger players. We haven't seen enough of Benny. Symir comes in and has his limitations and can only do so much. We're wondering about those young players. Buddy's on his way out. Jimmy, even if he gets an extra year of eligibility, I don't think he's going to come back next year. You're looking for those upside guys, right? We kind of know what Joe Girard is and what kind of player he can be. He can pop off and give you some scoring, but there's just too much inconsistency there. He's not a point guard. He's not a pure point guard. He shouldn't be the point guard of this team, frankly. He should be the 2 or off the ball more. And, that 3-guard lineup when it works. A lot of questions, a lot of valid questions out there for this team. That's for sure. Let's see. Lori makes a great point. On paper, this team should be excellent. Someone should send the memo to the locker room, right? Hey, you guys, you should be pretty good. I was pretty high on this team at the beginning of the year. I really was. I thought this team could just score in bunches, hold its own defensively. I looked at the ACC. I saw a wide open ACC. A lot of people saw this coming with the ACC. Yeah, Duke would be good. Miami was picked to finish 12th, right? A lot of teams that are at the top of the league right now were picked to finish middle or below because nobody really knew. It was just one of those weird transition years in the ACC. And I thought Syracuse had every opportunity to be right at the top of the league because their scoring was so overwhelming. But we've learned the athleticism is limited, and certainly the defense is a problem for this team at this point. Michael brings this up. Hopefully Symir isn't injured. Yeah, a little bit of a tweak as the game went along there at the end. He stayed in the game. I think he's okay. I have not seen anything from Jim Boeheim in terms of his post-game press conference, any updates on that. But everything we know at this point is I think he's okay. And let's hope he's okay because they certainly need him at this point. A couple more from you guys out there. Blake says this could be Boeheim's first losing season. I read Dana O'Neill, the Big East, and didn't realize Jim Calhoun only had one losing season. And a question for our colleague Mike Waters: how many college coaches never had a losing season? That's a great question. We'll have to float that for Mike's mailbox because up until this point, Boeheim's never had one. Calhoun had one. Krzyzewski's had, I think, a couple. Roy Williams had one. You name it. Right? All the great coaches out there, pretty much all of them have had losing seasons. I'd have to look it up, but I'm sure John Wooden had a losing season at one point. But we'll leave that to Mike Waters, who, by the way, we challenged Mike to solve the Taco Bell question last week, and my man came through. How many people actually use their ticket stub and cash in that free taco when Syracuse scores 70 points? I'm not going to give it away. You got to read the story. Mike Waters found the answer, because that's what Mike Waters does. He's the man in that case. Let's see. More from you guys here. Comments coming hot and heavy. Always appreciate you guys hanging with us here. Christians out there in the Great White North said, I know it's bad when I decide to walk the dog during the game and I'm in Canada. Yeah, it's getting a little bit nicer outside where we are here in Syracuse, but it's about 10 degrees right now. My dog looked at me and just said, don't even bother. No, just no. Don't even think about it. So I couldn't even go walk the dog to walk off the frustration. She's like, no, don't think so. Only 10 degrees out there. Let's see. Mike says it's not Boeheim. The guys you can't play defense and your offense comes from your defense. Michael says that Benny's had his confidence stolen at this point. I don't understand that. I think this was certainly a game that you could put Benny Williams in at the end. I mean, what are we talking about here? Duke's up by 30 well at the beginning into the middle part of the second half. You could put Benny in there. This one, I don't understand. There's been some other spots where I think it doesn't matter. Why not get him some run in this game? Is it going to make a difference? Once you're down by 30 points, you just kind of throw your hands up and say, let's get on to the next one here. But certainly agree that Benny could get into this one. Let's see. Steve says Brent's candy coating it again and not asking or discussing the tough questions. I mean, Steve, lay the tough questions on me. I can ask Jim Boeheim all the tough questions in the world. It doesn't mean this defense is going to play better. It doesn't mean Buddy Boeheim's going to shoot better than 1 for 11, right? I mean, the players decide games. We can ask the tough questions, if you will. You know how Boeheim's going to handle it. He's just going to be snarky and come back and, be in a bad mood and challenge those tough questions. It's interesting that he was asked about what was it, the chemistry experiment thing. And then the next game we saw all kinds of different lineups. So maybe that's the case. But I mean, he's a basketball coach. He's not a senator. I can ask him a lot of tough questions. It's not going to make this team play better. It'll make you feel better if I ask him some tough questions. Not going to make this team better, right? So I don't know what you want me to do. I mean, we're doing the best we can. We're covering it. We have to be fair in our analysis. Obviously, you're somebody that feels like we're not asking tough enough questions. I mean, this team keeps losing. It's the questions are not going to get easier. That's for sure. It's going to be a lot of tough questions, if you will. But look, Boeheim, he's a competitor, and he's a competitor in those press conferences. We start asking tough questions, he's just going to come back at us, and it's going to be a battle royale. So if anything, that could be something entertaining going down the stretch here. But we'll try and come up with tougher questions for you, Steve. Mike says, watching Auburn and Kentucky live, that's how Syracuse looked back in the 90s and early 2000s. Too bad where this program has gone. Yeah, Auburn, by the way, who by some rankings out there, the number 1 team in the country. Remember, Syracuse played Auburn in the Battle for Atlantis earlier this year, and that was one of those games. And that was early in the year, so you're not trying to make too many snap judgments, but the gap between those teams was pretty wide, and we saw that again here today with the Syracuse team against Duke, right? Let's see. Let's get a couple more from you guys in here. Always appreciate the passion and the opinions here. Just kind of scrolling through here. Mike says Benny kicks the ball out of bounds, loses one, misses a shot, fumbles one. He's just bad when he's out there. Yeah, Benny has his struggles. There's no question about it. I'm not going to candy coat the struggles he has out there, but I think he's a player in some ways, especially when you're down by 30 and it doesn't matter. You got to let him work through his struggles, right? Going forward, I wonder how much you go to, and if Benny's in, it's because Jimmy's struggling or Cole's struggling, right? Neither Jimmy Jimmy led the team in scoring, but it's not like he was killing it out there, right? So it's that balance. And, Jim's not going to experiment with this lineup, if you will. But that's why we haven't seen him, Mike. The counterpoint here and the good point that you make there is that's why you just don't play the kid. He does make a lot of mistakes. I think he's pretty good on defense. He takes that foul line jump shot a lot, and he's just not good at it. I don't know why he feels so comfortable taking that shot when he's not making it enough in games. He must kill it in practice with that shot because that's the one he feels comfortable doing. And it just goes to show you guys, look, the automatic go-to from fans when we talk about Benny is he's a 5-star. He's a 5-star. It doesn't matter how many stars you have next to your name. Some guys come to college, and it's a true adjustment. Speed of the game, rhythm of the game, life as a college student, getting into the flow of where you're at. Like, it's not an automatic transition like that. And I think Benny is a good example of that. And I think it has to be stated once again. Benny is somebody who has said all along he gets it. He trusts the process. He wants to be here. He's not going to transfer. So you got to take it for the kid's worth. He gets it. He understands what's going on here, and he's not going to, keep his eye on the portal and be like, oh, if I don't play more, I think I might jump in that portal. I think we should appreciate the fact that this kid gets it, and it is a process for him at this point. Frustrating because, the what have you done for me lately? 5-star guys, get him in there and let's go. One-and-done players in college basketball, right? But Benny's actually a throwback at this point. He's going to be around for the next couple of years, so we'll see how he develops. So certainly could have got some more playing time, in particular this game, but we'll see how that goes. Let's see. Mark asked Brent, does this season tarnish Jim Boeheim's legacy, having only losing season with both of his sons on the team? The optics are not good. You said the right word there, Mark, the optics of it, right? Think of the irony of that, too. That his worst season as head coach, and we're certainly heading down that road, will be with Jimmy and Buddy on the team. Now, Buddy's been there all along. Jimmy was an opportunity for Syracuse in the portal because of how weird things worked out. They needed a couple of players after, Braswell and Quincy Guerrier and Kadari Richmond, Woody Newton, a couple other guys all go into the portal. And Guerrier came later. There was a rush initially. Guerrier came later. He always knew he had Jimmy there. If Jimmy was going to keep playing basketball, he was always going to play at Syracuse. Jimmy Boeheim, look, guys, it is ironic that Jimmy and Buddy are on the team. Jimmy's a productive player. Does Jimmy have his flaws defensively? For sure, right? But Jimmy Boeheim's been in double figures, what is it? I think 14, 15 times this year. He scores. He can shoot threes. His free throw struggle, his defense struggles. Everybody's got their flaws out there. But it's not like Jimmy's running around there looking like, he's on the 8th grade team playing varsity. I think he's a productive player for this team. I think people just kind of, they're losing and he's Jim Boeheim's son, and why is he even playing out there? Jimmy's holding his own for the most out there, right? Again, I'm not going to put him, as one of the top players in the ACC or anything, but he's not staggering around out there like he doesn't belong, right? I think there's a balance there. But Mark makes an interesting point about the legacy. I mean, it's the optics of it. You're going to have your worst season with your sons out there. I mean, you can't get around that. So, yeah, as you guys say here, I just lost it. I wanted to highlight a comment there, but they're coming in so hot and heavy. I lost where it was, guys. That's how busy you have been. Let's shout out our guy Jeff here. Here it is. There's my guy Jeff. Says, never seen a Syracuse team more outclassed. Time to start playing Benny a lot and look to the future. The present is shot. Most of us underestimated the recruiter that Mike Hopkins was. The athletes SU lost to the transfer portal were needed today. Kadari Richmond in particular. Remember, Kadari had a huge game against Duke in the second half last year. They lost that game, but he had 15 points in the second half. You certainly could have used the bulk and the power of Quincy Guerrier underneath. The makeups of teams are different, as you know, Jeff, but outclassed is an apt description. Out athletic, if you will. This team just can't keep pace with teams that have a lot of athletes on it. And we're in an interesting time here with Syracuse as the talent drain has been. There's some guys kind of holding on, but what did Judge Smale say? How do you measure yourself against other golfers? How do you measure yourself talent-wise against other teams in the ACC? This is the most talented team in the ACC. And look at the result and look at the big gap that is there. So very humbling there for sure. Let's see. A couple more from you guys, and we'll wrap it up for the afternoon here and enjoy the 10-degree weather outside. Chris says the transfer portal is changing college basketball. You have to adapt. Boeheim hasn't. Well, I mean, they've gotten a bunch of players out of the portal, Chris. It's not like they're not using the portal. They got Symir out of the portal. They got Cole Swider out of the portal. Jimmy is obviously, he's in your living room. You don't have to search far for him. Syracuse has adjusted there. They have sought and got players out of the portal. And remember, the portal's only a year and a half old in college basketball. So if you're saying Jim Boeheim hasn't adapted, I think you have to use other examples because they have used the transfer portal. I get what you're saying in other ways, but if you're citing the transfer portal as the reason he hasn't adapted, that's false because they did use the transfer portal to get some players out of it. If they just kind of sat around and did nothing last year when the portal was an option, that'd be one thing, but they have used it. So I don't think that's a good example to say he hasn't adapted. In other ways, you can certainly make that case for sure. Merritt says, sad part, if Syracuse made the tournament and went to the Sweet 16, it would be hailed as a great season. Yeah, if the bottom line is what you do in the tournament, that it would be, right? What do you say we'll end there for today? Michael says, let's go Titans. No, you guys are going to be watching the NFL playoffs this weekend. You know where Uncle Brent's going, right? Got to wait till Sunday night. Got to wait the whole weekend, but let's go Buffalo. Speaking of which, shout out to our guy, Matt Perino and Ryan Talbot. The job they do covering the Buffalo Bills on syracuse.com is excellent. They have a fantastic podcast, which is very similar to this show. They do it live on YouTube and Facebook and everything, and then it archives on YouTube and on iTunes and all the places you can get podcasts. It's called Shout, the Buffalo Bills podcast. It's excellent. They did it from a bar in Kansas City where Matt is covering the Bills Chiefs AFC divisional playoff round. So go listen and watch that if you're a Bills fan. Those guys do a spectacular job here for syracuse.com. So our next broadcast here, I believe, is Tuesday night. Let me look it up here so we can give you guys the details. We come up here live on Syracuse Basketball Postgame as soon as the game's over, live on Facebook, live on YouTube. It does archive on YouTube, and you can find it on our social media channels. I embed it in my recap on syracuse.com, but always fun to chat with you guys live after the game. Yep, Tuesday night, 8 o'clock is the game time. So as soon as that one's over at Pittsburgh, and of course, Syracuse will be playing Pittsburgh for the second time. They beat Pitt 77-61 back on January 11th. So Pitt comes around the bend again. Another road game for Syracuse. Today started to stretch where 3 of their next 4 are on the road. So they lose to Duke. They go to Pitt, home to Wake Forest. Rumors abound. Big star going to be in the building for that one. I believe it's going to be Giannis Antetokounmpo and his brother, but we'll see who it is. At NC State after that. So Syracuse loses this one at Duke, 79-59. They are 9-10 on the season. We'll be back with you Tuesday night when Syracuse plays Pittsburgh. See if the Orange can get back on the 500 line. And in the meantime, enjoy the rest of your weekend and go Bills. Thanks, everybody, for hanging out. We'll talk to you again Tuesday night.